Hey, I built an ark this morning. Yeah.
How long do you have to be in attendance to remain on the list?
What we got?
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Thursday, January 24th. And thank you all for attending. Hope you all drove here safely. The roads seem to be fine. Lots of rain, a little bit of water. It's really good for the environment, isn't it, Jerry? This evening, we are missing a couple of people, and I would just like to let everyone know that Carl Valenti, our temporary town administrator, our interim town administrator, is away on vacation, which was scheduled prior to his beginning his employment with us. And in addition, we are missing Mr. Shillo this evening. Mr. Shillo is with her daughter, who had minor surgery today, and we are extending all of our best wishes to her daughter. So that is why you have a couple of people missing this evening. Our first order of business this evening is to address the citizens' request for zoning enforcement at 283, 285 Dedham Street regarding a business that's operating at that site. Before we begin, Mr. Hines, I would just like to make a statement in regards to a question that you posed to the board through Mr. Schill. Earlier this week, you had asked if, in fact, I was a customer of Doggy Dates, and would that, me being a customer of Doggy Dates, create a conflict of interest. So I took the liberty of taking your question to our town council. It's never been brought to us before, and I'd just like to give you their reply with regards to that. And it's never come up, and we take those matters seriously, so I thought I'd just begin with letting you know what they said, and I'll read just a little bit from it, but certainly paraphrase. Essentially, what we act as a board we're a citizens board, and we are members of the community. Doggy Dates is a business that we run, and I am a customer of Doggy Dates. My family and I guess we have 2 dogs, and we have employed them. So in that context, I asked town council to entertain your question. And the answer was, as a board, we are responsible for licensing, we're responsible for liquor licenses, one-day licenses. Unless we have a direct interest ownership, unless we receive remuneration from something that we're granting a license to, there is no conflict. So it would be similar to Doug Wolf or the mobile station or the Dover Market. We grant operating licenses, liquor licenses, one-day licenses. We're in fact the landlord technically of Dover Automotive. So there is no conflict, and certainly I believe we all are customers of all those businesses that we mentioned. So I just wanted you to know that we took that pretty seriously and just wanted to report back to you. And so based upon the advice of our council, there is no conflict because I don't own any type of interest in the business in question. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Either of you like to add anything?
No, it's good. No.
Okay. So I just felt like it was important to address that at the beginning. I would like you to, with regards to your question, with your request to us, is there anything that you would like to add? We've all had an opportunity to read the letter that you've given us. We've shared it with our outside counsel, and is there anything that you would like to add prior to our reply to your letter?
Not that I can think of now, no.
For those people watching, perhaps you can summarize
The letter.
the letter.
It's a lengthy letter.
Does it make sense to talk about the process before we hear how you're going to deal with it?
But we probably would like to review the process, yeah? Just to make sure everybody's sort of clear how this thing is.
Sure.
Well, I think it would be a good idea to explain the matter
And go
and
through?
then go through the process.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. So please feel free, by the way, to
You know us.
Goes without saying. So,
If you mess up.
We'll help you out.
in the matter that's before us regarding the business at the sites in question, the matter is a business that is operating in an area that has been operating in that area under a process that is governed through zoning. And I believe, with regards to your letter to us, you are asking us to step into the process that is ongoing, that has been before the zoning board and other boards, the Board of Health, the Planning Board, in the process of this business operating in the town of Dover. So far, so good?
And you
So far,
mentioned
so
the
good.
addresses, right?
I did mention the addresses, 283 and 285 Dedham Street, currently.
Yeah, don't want to disagree right off the bat here, but I think it's a very narrow issue. You guys enforce zoning regulations, and it's a request for you to enforce the zoning regulation, nothing more, nothing less.
Okay. Is there anything?
And we, no, are you gonna respond?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, in that matter, with regards to your letter to us, we went to outside counsel asking their opinion for not only the matter, but more importantly, the process as to our intervention in the process. And I will, again, this is the part where I apologize, but I'll read to you because, please don't take this the wrong way. Attorneys sometimes speak in ways that are not necessarily the way you would convey something specifically. So I want to be careful to read to you exactly what our outside counsel said. The BOS discussed the matter with town council. The board was advised that at this time, the matter is a zoning board issue, which is currently ongoing. Part one. Part two is the board is advised not to address an incomplete matter in front of another board. End of part two. Does that make sense?
No,
Okay.
there's no ongoing process.
There is an ongoing process.
I'm not aware of any application with the zoning board of appeals.
There is an application that there is a process that was withdrawn.
Okay,
So the current business has the ability to go to the zoning board to complete the process.
okay. I understand that. Just
That's where we are.
Your attorneys, did your attorneys, was it explained to your attorneys that this business is operating without a special permit?
It was.
And the zoning regulations require a special permit to operate the business?
All of the above.
And they felt that, so in other words, I could build a house and then come in for a permit after I build the house?
No,
I can't do that.
no. What you've done.
It's not a good parallel?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Because what has happened is the operators of the business went to the enforcer, who is the building inspector. The building inspector has this matter under his purview right now. That's where it stands at the building inspector.
Okay. My understanding is that the building inspector and the board of selectmen are burdened with the authority and responsibility to enforce the zoning regulations, not the building inspector or the board of selectmen, both of them.
After a hearing has occurred with a decision rendered by the zoning board of appeals. So we need the process to play itself out at the zoning board level. Now, we this evening, we will not make a decision, and we will not make a decision until such time that this process plays itself out at the zoning board of appeals, because that's the process that we have to follow.
Okay. The zoning board of appeals has nothing in front of them currently.
Correct.
So that could go on indefinitely. So you're saying indefinitely they can operate that business
No,
in violation of the zoning regulations?
no.
Well, that's yet to be
Do you have a
determined.
time limit on when they can reapply and get going on this thing?
The zoning board meets based upon their schedule. They have no set time, so
But they're not going to take the matter up. They said at the zoning board of appeals, in fact, Alan Fryer said you guys are operating without a special permit. And it's like, well, it's not our job to enforce the zoning regulations. It's our job to handle appeals to decisions of the zoning regulations.
The building inspector has the jurisdiction and has the ability, under his discretion, to allow a business to operate in the manner that he deems to be appropriate. So there's not an indefinite amount of time. The matter is under his discretion. The operator has to follow the guidelines, in this particular case, the special permitting process of which they will do.
You guys all have a letter in front of you.
Yes.
Yep.
Sixth paragraph down, it's just one line. It is the intent of this chapter to prohibit in any district any use which is not specifically permitted.
During, and I don't know if you were present.
It doesn't say unless we have a policy to allow something to go on or in special circumstances or this, that, or the other thing. It basically says that the intent of the chapter is to prohibit in any district any use which is not specifically permitted. There is no specific permit for this operation going on. It is in violation of the Dover zoning regulations. Would you agree with that?
Currently, the owner has the ability, which they are in the process of doing, through the inspector, to apply for the special permit.
I just told you, there's no application in for a special permit. And you should know that.
As
And
far
your town council should know that.
Well, we do know, I mean, what we have, there's letters in here that say they're working on reapplying for the special permit. The issue ultimately will come down to sort of this question, since it's not specified in terms of the length of the time. And I do understand that this has been
You
going on
understand it's
for
been going on
over,
for over 17 months.
yeah, well over a year, yes.
Yeah. So is that kind of normal?
So the question becomes, at what point would a reasonable person enforce the action? And take it into account the business owner's, ability to go and apply. So we don't have a clear answer as to what that time period should be. I understand it to be a judgment call. And so I think, from my perspective, it's one of the things I would like to find out, actually.
Well, I don't think that's the board's job. The board's job is to enforce zoning regulations. I believe it's the Board of Appeals' job in
Right.
taking on an application for a special permit
Right.
to weigh the interest of doggy days versus the neighbors that have barking dogs.
Except that
Going to their property every weekday.
Except that we've gotten advice from council that says, in this particular matter, we should try to make sure that the process that's been specified actually works through.
The
That,
process has been specified. There's no application.
We have letters that an application is being worked on.
And that's been going on for 17 months.
no, the letter was December 18th, I
No,
believe.
but the operation has been going on for 17 months. The credibility of the applicant is more than suspect.
It's not,
And
it's not our job.
Okay.
It's not a matter, the credibility of a business owner is not something that we can even comment on. What we have been, there's two parts of this that we have to take into consideration. What we've been advised by outside counsel in terms of the process, and ultimately what a use that is already been accepted and prohibited is under the current bylaw. The current bylaw that zoning went back and forth, and the night that they sat in this room, you were here and I was here, they debated for 90 minutes that the current use of which they're applying for is accepted. So
excuse me, were you here for the deliberations in that meeting?
I was here for 90% of it, except for the part where I went down
Were
to,
you here after the hearing was closed?
for part of it, I was.
And are you aware that the application was going to be denied?
No, I was
Well,
not
there was
aware.
no vote. until there is a vote by the zoning board of appeals,
What I was aware.
there's no,
I'm sorry.
I mean, the matter is not resolved.
Right, it's not resolved.
So there was no vote by the zoning board of appeals.
I'm not asking you
The
to resolve
application
anything.
was, we're just telling you, we have a process that we have to follow. We understand your frustration, but we have a process that we need to follow. And the process that we need to follow is, on December 18th, we got a letter from the business stating that they were going to submit an application. Today is January 24th. It's 30-plus days. We can go back and ask the interim town administrator to figure out the status of that application, and then we can request that the zoning board has a hearing at which they vote this matter. Because that's the process that needs to be followed.
Yeah.
You know, the process wasn't followed through because the zoning board did not vote on the matter, and in addition to that, the attorney for the business pulled the application.
Withdrew.
the
Withdrew.
application.
Without prejudice.
Right,
When
right.
they learned that the application was going to be denied. That apparently is the policy of the planning board.
Not necessarily. There's two
I
parts of
got an
that.
email from Mr. Fryer.
There's two parts of the conversation at the planning board level, the zoning board level. The zoning board level. The zoning board discussion, the internal discussion within the zoning board is, they're dealing with a matter that's allowed.
No,
They spend
you know what, right then and
minutes.
there, you're incorrect. It is allowed with a special permit.
Correct.
It is not allowed without a special permit.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
I
it's a minor correction, but
It
It's
is
a major
allowed
correction.
with a special permit.
Yes.
So what our interim town administrator wants to get up to speed on and wants the advice of council on is, what is the likelihood of the town of Dover if depending upon how the zoning board votes, regardless of the outcome, if it is appealed, what is the likelihood the town of Dover will lose? That's what we as a board and other boards need to know.
Does the outside council give a time on this, or is this indefinite until somebody decides to apply and the zoning board decides to opine on the application? How long does one have to wait till discretion is resolved?
It's a reasonable question, and the discretion is at the level of the inspector. So the inspector has the discretion.
So it could be infinite, time could be infinite. If there's, it's his discretion, he's happy with it, he says, as long as there's some activity. Some people would feel there's no activity with no application, which means there's no answer to the question. And I think outside counsel should finish the job and say, within X amount of time, something has to be done, or else it goes on forever. How long are people supposed to wait and listen to dogs bark before something happens by whatever committee is necessary?
The next part of that question is, if in fact the business appeals a decision, hypothetically, if the decision is against them, and the business wins based upon an previously accepted special permitting as exists currently, have in the town of Dover, and there has been in the town of Dover, dogs, kennels. There's that, I don't know if the hounds refer to where they live as a kennel, but there is, the hounds at the hunt club have been occupying their facility for a very, very long time.
With a permit.
With a permit.
But these people don't have a permit, that's the difference.
Right, so I think the conversation here is circular, and you're getting frustrated, and I understand that.
Yes.
But, so our commitment will be to go back, get a better understanding on where the application process is and how long it's gonna take, go back to the ZBA and ask them, upon receipt, when the application goes in, when will they schedule their next meeting, and we will notify you of those two outcomes. Right? I mean,
So
because
so
tonight
create a
we can
timeline.
make-
You want to
Yeah,
create a
create a
timeline.
timeline.
Yeah.
Right, so we're gonna create a timeline, because we cannot make a decision tonight. We will not make a decision tonight. We certainly understand your frustration, but, you know, again, I can just reiterate what we said. We need the process to play itself out. And so we will move the process along. We will, when Mr. Valenti gets back, we will ask him to follow up on the status of the application. You know, let the attorney for Doggy Dates know that they can't take 17 more months. We need to know his timeline for submitting the application, and then we'll go back to the zoning board of appeals and ask them when their next meeting can be.
So you want to inject the Board of Selectmen into the
I'm
Board of
not
Appeals
injecting
process?
into the board of selectmen into anything. I am trying to move the process along.
Okay, let me just, one more try here, and I know it's going to fail, but I just want to
Well,
just give it a simplistic try, if you don't mind. Chat, at the beginning of the letter, section 185.47 of the zoning bylaw states, this chapter shall be enforced by the building inspector appointed by the Board of Selectmen and by the general authority of the Board of Selectmen. Okay,
After
so now the
according,
way I
once
read
again,
that-
yeah, I see what you
Okay,
read,
I
but
have a
once
question for you.
again,
I have a question for you. Do you guys have the authority to enforce the zoning bylaws based upon what I just read to you and what you can read in the first paragraph?
it has to follow through
It's a yes or
the
no
process.
question. I'm
No,
going to
but,
cross-examine you. Do you have the authority
I
to
will
enforce?
cannot give
The
you a yes or
person-
no. There is a process that starts with the building inspector.
Okay.
It then goes through the zoning board of appeals, and then, once a decision is rendered, we can enforce it,
I think the
right?
answer you're looking for, Mr. Hines, is that the building inspector is the enforcement officer. The building inspector, as you just read, and as we understand the process, the building inspector is the enforcement officer.
Well, according to the bylaw, it's the building inspector and the general authority of the Board of Selectmen. It's written right in front of you.
It is. And my interpretation, and the interpretation as it was explained to me by our outside counsel, is the building inspector is under the general discretion, the purview of the Board of Selectmen, as are many other.
I have one other simple question, and it really deserves a yes or no answer. As it stands now, is the Doggy Dates operation without a special permit in violation of the zoning bylaws?
No.
Okay. So
Process.
talk about the process from here, then. I'm giving up.
Okay,
Which,
and
you're done, I mean,
the
we obviously-
answer, I believe, your question was asked and answered by the first part of my sentence, which was, we asked that question of the process to our outside counsel. Our outside counsel answered your question specifically. The process is incomplete. Therefore, it is my determination, and I can only speak for the board in the context of the conversation that I had on behalf of the board with our outside counsel. I believe our outside counsel, please feel free to interject, our outside counsel would take that matter very seriously, as they always have, any matter we brought before them, and bring it to our attention if they felt it was. Does that make sense?
No, but it is what it is. You have a letter from your outside counsel? With this, I mean, they were,
It's a work in progress.
you have written material from outside counsel regarding this matter.
No.
I think,
There
So
was-
there was a note to
verbal
Walter.
interpretation of what you spoke to them about?
Excuse me?
I thought you just read something from outside counsel.
I did.
Oh, okay, so you have written material from outside counsel, or these are notes that?
These are notes. This is an ongoing process.
So this is a verbal communication with outside counsel?
It is. We
And
communicate
this
with
is
outside
your-
counsel.
Okay, and can I ask who had this verbal?
I did.
Okay. And so, I assumed there was a written opinion from outside counsel. It's really a verbal opinion which was
No.
given to you and which you're relaying to us.
No, this is the opinion of outside counsel as to how we should proceed with this matter.
Okay.
Your question's
But my
been
question
asked
is,
and
was
answered.
the opinion given verbally or in writing or both?
Verbally.
Only verbally.
Only verbally.
Where do we go from here?
The process is ongoing.
And what is the next step in the process?
I think Robin spelled it out from our point of view.
Right, we're gonna ask Mr. Valente when he returns from vacation on Tuesday to follow up on this matter with Doggy Dates Council to determine where they are in the process of the application. And once we get an answer to that, we'll also let the zoning boards of appeal know where that application stands so that they can schedule their next meeting.
And in your own minds, do you have a time limit, or whatever they say is okay?
Well, if he says 17 months, I think a reasonable person would say, well, that's not okay. You know, they need to be working on the process. So when we get an answer, we will let you know. You know, I would expect as a reasonable person that maybe in the next 30 days they would have an application, but I don't know. That's my educated guess.
I agree with you, 17 months is too long, and that's what we've been through.
Yeah, we understand that. That's very clear.
Okay, so this letter was sent to you, or you received the letter on the 18th, is that right? I think it's the day after the letter's dated. It was received, it was sent to you by 4 neighbors. Is there a date at the time?
The letter's dated January
The
15th.
letter's dated January.
Yeah, so I wrote it in on the 16th, but do you have another date that you have it either stamped at or something like that, that it was received by the board? Because that should be clarified, I think.
No, my copy does not.
Okay. I gave it to, I'm sorry, is it Mona in the office?
Yes, Mona's
And she's not here tonight.
correct.
Correct.
My,
What's your question?
well, I just want to get dates straight. I'm telling you that it was delivered on the 16th, the day after the date of the letter.
I'll take your word for that.
So this letter from 4 residents was delivered. Are there any time issues involved now, given that you've received this letter?
I'm not sure I understand.
Relative to what? Time
Okay.
issues relative to
If
what?
you go through the zoning bylaws, you'll find that it is your responsibility. The way I read the zoning bylaws, and do you have the zoning bylaws in front of you?
I don't.
My understanding is that you can act and enforce the zoning regulations, as was the request. Or you have 14 days to reply as to why you're not going to. So in fact, there is a time
You
frame
can take
in
your,
place.
you can take my reply to you this evening, which is well within the 14 days, as to why we're not responding to your letter. We have been advised by counsel verbally.
Okay, can I take that now? My understanding, and please correct me, and Robin may know a lot more than I do, is you have made a decision not to enforce
We have not.
zoning regulation.
No, it's incorrect.
Okay.
We've made a decision to follow the advice of counsel,
You've made
to
a
let the
decision.
process run its
Okay.
course.
Okay. But you're required to notify people that make the request within 14 days. Shall I take some time and find the zoning bylaw for you?
No, not necessary.
Oh, here we go.
Not necessary.
Am I correct about this?
You'll have to ask them.
Can you read what you have there?
You'll have to.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So anyways,
It's,
I assume coming in that if we receive I believe it might say written response from the board stating that for whatever reasons, you're not going to enforce the zoning bylaw, then the neighbors can appeal that to the Board of Appeals. And then the process from there, if it wasn't satisfied to the neighbors' satisfaction, then they would obviously go to court. Is that the process as you see it? Or shall we look into that first? Before, I mean, it sounds like we're kind of wishy-washy on that.
So I am not in a position to interpret the bylaws. We will touch base with town council
Yeah, you're afraid it's going to take a little bit of time. Look, believe me, I know you guys are all volunteers. This is nothing that anybody is thrilled about dealing with, but it's only 5.
What exactly are you looking for?
No, I think looking for the part about the 14 days to reply to a written request.
So, you know, we have other
Matters in front of us this evening.
So
Your-
we will
your request.
consult with town council
And the administrator,
and the
town administrator.
administrator. We will contact town council tomorrow and to answer that question, and if a written response is required, we will have town council.
Okay. Your judgment about conflict of interest, was that also done verbally with
It was.
town council?
The question of conflict of interest was brought to my attention 2 days ago. I believe you had the conversation with Mrs. DeShilla 2 days ago. Is that correct?
It wasn't me, but one of the neighbors indicated that they thought you were a customer of Doggy Dates based upon you being at the Board of Appeals meeting.
I was. I
And-
made that public at the, I believe it was the planning board was the first meeting. I made it public, and I believe it in front of
That was almost, that was February of last year.
February of last year.
Yeah. So I talked to Mona and said, look, it's out there. Conflicts are something that, I mean, you guys are professional. Conflict is not an issue. But it was better just to get it on the table as opposed to coming up later.
Happy to address it.
Okay.
So,
So
I
with this-
don't think we need to.
So within the timeline, we'd make sure that we keep everybody informed of what we find out and what we think the correct course of action is, right?
Mr. Valente will get back.
Is it best if myself or other neighbors be in touch with Carl?
That's the proper course.
Okay. Because he's been really attentive, and I know he's not going to be here permanently, but I think you're in good hands, at least from my point of view. You got a question, he finds the answer, and gets back to it. You can't ask for more than that.
Excellent. Great. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, is there anything exciting going on after this?
Lots.
You never know.
The next matter before us this evening is to declare surplus items.
Now we're out of here.
It's 3 pages, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
There are 3 pages.
There are 3 pages. I wasn't-
Surplus items,
It's all old computer equipment.
for the most part.
May I speak to that,
You may.
this issue?
You may.
This all came about because the combination of the planning board, the Conservation Commission, and the Board of Health all determined, as was reported to you 2 months ago, that they had within their existing funds the capability to purchase a large format scanner printer, which does not fall under the purview of the capital budgeting committee. And the 3 boards did individually vote to expend those funds, and the item has now been purchased. It is awaiting delivery for lack of a place to put it. We're in a sort of catch-22 because the place where we would put it is occupied by one of those very same file cabinets holding very large prints. And once this scanner printer is in operation and over a period of time scans these large prints, we could store in some archival location these documents because they would be available online to any citizen and to any board. So we're in a catch-22. We can't put the printer in until we move that cabinet. We can't move the cabinet until we have a place to put it. And a lot of the space that's occupied is occupied by archaic, unused equipment.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to clarify one thing. The reason why it didn't come under the purview of the Capital Budget Committee because of its cost.
Correct.
Didn't hit the threshold, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So then I make a motion to to.
accept
to
the
accept
surplus
the
items
surplus
as
items.
delineated in front of us, and we don't have to read them.
No,
Thankfully.
That might be a good thing to do.
No, it wouldn't be a good thing to do. At some
I
point,
can't, I don't have my glasses.
Yeah, exactly.
I read them at
I will
home.
tell you, there are two IBM wheelwriter typewriters.
Well, those are actually selector typewriters.
Second-
I went through the list with Carl.
It was a Del Vostro. I used to have a Del Vostro.
Do I have a second?
Do I have, does Mrs. Hunter have a second?
Second,
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
This equipment may be disposed of
This equipment may be disposed of.
properly.
Thank you.
Just so you understand, some of that equipment will still have value, and that value will accrue to the town,
right,
not throwing it out
right.
No.
necessarily.
Yeah, that was the second, that was one of the questions. Well, you know,
Yes.
does
I
it
mean,
give
the
away
selectric actually- the one working selectric actually has value.
at the Smithsonian?
Excuse me.
Next item on our agenda this evening is to vote to accept and expand the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection grant funds, specifically for the sign, as I understand it.
For the which?
The sign?
Yes, that is the recycling committee, yes.
Which is in front of us, and it is in the amount of $4,200.
I believe it's a series of signs.
It is a series of signs.
That's why the cost. And they are similar to the ones currently at the transfer station, attempting to further educate the public in the appropriate disposition of materials that cannot be thrown into the trash by state regulation.
Okay,
So Jerry, the town of Dover has earned 12 points and will earn $4,200.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Well, again, to explain very briefly, the DEP not only will provide funds for actions taken by a municipality furthering the action of the regulations regarding solid waste disposition, but they also award points, and the more points that the town accrues, the more opportunity there is for receiving further funds.
Understood? We'll accept a motion to accept the 12 points, or in the amount of $4,200.
so moved.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
And it's going to be a solar-powered programmable sign that
Yes.
purchase
Which
Well-
will be at
the transfer
the
station.
transfer station,
And it will make announcements as well as,
used by hopefully most of the boards in town to make announcements and.
Yes, well, to clarify, the police department does have one, but its funding was under the Massachusetts Public Safety. Its use is somewhat restricted, whereas this would be not under public safety, but by DEP, and therefore a wider range of departments, commissions could use it.
Yeah. Next item on our agenda is to designate a voting member to the West Suburban Health Group. So this item is on our agenda this evening because prior to this evening, Dave Ramsey was our designate. And Jerry Lane is our alternate designate. So I had the conversation on behalf of the board with Jerry Lane if he would step into that role. He has agreed to step into the role. Prior to this evening, I had the opportunity to ask Mr. Clark if he would accept the alternate, although we've then now come to the conclusion that although it's the same name, it's a different board.
Yes, and if we could, I just want to briefly, when you vote on this appointment, if I could just ask you to, in the near future, make these other appointments for positions that have been lacking a representative for years.
Do we have a list?
Do we have a list?
Yeah, I sent it to you. It is the Metropolitan Area Planning Council
You did send it to me, but I thought you were talking, I apologize
and
for that.
the Metro West Health Foundation,
Okay,
both of which are health related.
so noted. Okay, what do we get?
Well, the actual language is The motion to read, the move to authorize town administrator or person acting in that capacity to designate a voting member to West Suburban Health Group.
Okay,
We'll accept that motion.
so moved.
Seconded?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, sir.
So, as I say, I don't expect you to act tonight, but if you would put it on a
Yep.
near-term agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item for us to review and review the remote participation policy. Mr. Spring, would you care to bring us
Well,
up
you
to
forgot
date?
about the warrant.
Warrant.
Oh, I apologize. Review the 2019 annual town meeting warrant articles submitted to date.
You have to read it by line?
Well, I think, so currently we have 30 warrant articles. Many of them are placeholders from organizations that may want to, before town meeting, to have a warrant article. They are in order in which they've received. We haven't talked about ordering the warrants yet. That's something we do later on in the process, once we figure out where the warrants actually end up, because many of these are placeholders. Many of the warrant articles are just standard, election of
Right, right,
officials.
right.
There are a couple of items now, and again, some of these will be removed. They are placeholders. There is a selectmen's article for appropriations for a information technology study and analysis, which we're going to be talking about at some later meetings once we get some proposals and understand
Yep.
the costs related to that. There are a couple of articles that we have placeholders for that potentially are an outcome of the free cash conversations that are happening. So there's an article or placeholder for certain stabilization funds that we may want to set up. There's a article right now for a potential article for the rail trail project, should we need that. There's an article for the Carroll Community Center, because as you recall at town meeting, the motion that was made on the floor was to conduct a study, and the monies that were appropriated could be used for the study, for the renovation of the building, but not for a design for a new building.
So I have a note that perhaps that should say new facility.
Right, and so the Carroll Community Center committee is, thinks that this is going to be working with town council on this particular warrant article so that we can do a full analysis.
Make sure we have money to do
Right,
it,
and make
if we need to.
Right, and make sure that we have the money to do it if we need to. And I think those are the non-regular warrant articles. Did I miss one?
No, there is the request that the town adopt Mass General Laws, Chapter 40,
Oh, yes.
Section U,
It's on there.
which is, would be a change to the town code.
Correct. And there's also the acceptance of Chapter 59, Section 57A, which is payment of tax bills for less than $100. So those are just some of the items. At our meetings, as we refine this process and as we have a better idea as to what appropriations may be, we will have discussions about them. But right now, this is just, again, a preliminary list.
Would you like to add anything to that?
No,
Thank you.
I think that's,
I
I was stunned by the number of
Well, it's-
potential
at
articles.
Potential articles.
At this point in the process, this is not,
Yeah, I know, it's just the first cut.
right, it's not.
We discussed many of these at warrant last night, and as Mrs. Hunter articulated, some of these will be eliminated, some of these will, if we find they are duplicated. I just want to also reiterate that within the scope of an article, as we discovered and as we have lived by for the past 10 months with regard to the Carroll Community Study, you have to maintain your operating process within the scope of the article. So some of these articles, as Mrs. Hunter described in regards to Carroll, are a result of what we have done since the last town meeting.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Thank you. So we do not have to read them item by item, we just have
Oh,
to
please.
accept them as submitted.
I'll make a motion to accept the 30 warrant articles as submitted.
Yeah, I'll second
Seconded. All in favor?
it. Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Now you're on your remote participation.
Remote participation, Mr. Swain. Remote participation.
Well, as you all know from the last time we met, we had asked the interim town administrator to take a look at remote participation policy. He informed us that it was something that we can do as a board, and he was kind enough at that time to give us a copy of a policy that was for a different town, and we asked him to go back and modify the policy for Dover. So in front of us, we actually have a draft of a remote participation policy. You know, I don't think there's anything, I've gone through it a couple of times. I mean, it's obviously adheres to state guidelines. There's several comments in there about making sure that it's used as on an exception basis than as a matter of course. The chairman of the respective boards and committees have some discretion under the policy. Essentially, it says if there's a good reason to need to attend a meeting, it allows by call-in, it allows by video conference, it allows several different other ways of making it happen. To me, it read pretty straightforward, and I'd move to adopt it.
Is
I
it-
second that.
Yeah. So we can accept a motion to adopt a draft policy with the understanding that the policy will be amended, can be amended as
Well,
needed.
the other thing that's, I think it's important, the draft policy is right, because I think one of the other steps we want to do before adopting the policy
Exactly.
is to have it circulated
Amongst
among
the other boards.
the other boards
Get their
and
input.
commissions to get their input. So, I mean, I don't know if, I think maybe that's enough at this point.
It is, yeah. So
And we also authorize the town administrator to purchase a conference phone for this room so that meetings can be held here.
We're told he looked on Amazon, and I think, you know, we might be able to do that. So I think so the next step is for us to tell Carl that this is
Send it
fine,
out, right.
and then we want to solicit the input from the other boards and committees.
So it's our intent that the draft policy be disseminated to the other boards, to get feedback from the other boards, and then at that time, and in the not-too-distant future, be able to accept it as amended. So at this moment, accept the draft remote participation
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah,
So-
we're happy with it, yeah.
With happy,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
And we'll get it distributed to other boards. It's something that many citizens of Dover have asked about. And, you know, many people would be more inclined to be on committees if they could participate by phone if they needed to.
Yeah, I mean, it was very clear when I was on the capital budget committee, and we had a couple of people who needed to be in Boston
Right.
or elsewhere, or be called in, and they missed meetings, and they were, you know, it hurt them a little bit. They really would have preferred to have the opportunity to call in, or, so this is going to help out a number of people.
Camille, this is something obviously that we've discussed with the Council on Aging, and is there anything that you would like to add to this, just in
I just
general?
had one thought. Have people vote, then they can vote by phone?
Yes.
Yes.
That
Yes.
would be part of the policy.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I probably was the one who threw this one in on a while ago. The intent here was to be able to complete a quorum through the remote presence and to vote. But as John has said, not on a regular basis. This has got to be controlled. But there are often extenuating, and I wrote the letter for the basis of the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, and the Board of Health, all of whom at times have suffered for the lack of the presence.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Clark and Camille. Thank you for your input. Updates. Selectmen updates. The first item on our update issue is update item is rail trail. Mrs. Hunter, would you like to speak to that?
So the FDG and the Board of Selectmen have been busy trying to move the rail trail project forward. Very excited. I think we are going to get a grant application in by February 1st. Val, I'd like to personally thank you for taking the first pass at the application. I actually have some comments and some revisions that we've made. I also, as part of this process, just for informational purposes, this Mass Trails grant, Needham received $70,000, and we believe Medfield is getting $100,000. And so we are applying for the grant. What we can apply for is the first phase of the project, which is the design. We can receive up to 80% of funding for that phase, which is about $198,000. It's unclear as to whether environmental insurance is covered under the grant, but since it's vague, we're going to include the full amount and see what the Commonwealth decides. We also, thanks again to Val, reached out to Denise Garland's office, and they are writing a letter of support for us, which we should get next week. The Board of Selectmen, I sent a draft letter out for both of you to review so that we can include the letter of our support with this grant application. This is a reimbursement grant, and so we're trying to determine whether it makes sense for the grant application to be done by the town of Friends of the Dover Greenway. At this point, we believe that the town should apply for the grant, but we're still trying to get clarification of that point. We will also be able to apply for the grant again next year when we're ready, pending the due diligence and design phase. When we're ready to begin the construction, we are then able once again to apply for this grant. So I think we're in very good shape. I wasn't sure we'd be able to get there by February 1st, but it's looking good so far. We also, as part of an ongoing process, we have looked at the costs that we got from Beals and Thomas, as well as the costs for construction of other rail trails. Medfield, we just got costs also from Beals and Thomas. We talked to Mr. Valente about our concern regarding the costs that we received as we compare them to the costs of the other towns. Mr. Valente offered, and now that I do have Medfield's, Beals and Thomas proposal, to sit down with the staff in Dover, as well as to talk to some other towns about cost estimates that they received, so that we have some additional information that we can then all have a meeting with Beals and Thomas to better understand the composition of the line items, because the difference in costs that Medfield received versus Dover are significant. It's almost twice. I was going to say 2 times. So, this is an exercise that we are committed to going through. This probably within the next 2 weeks, but critical path was to get the grant application in. So if I could get your approval on the support letter from the Board of Selectmen, I would appreciate that.
So
I saw there were 2 typos.
There were
I
2
will fix
typos.
those.
There were 2 typos in that letter.
they will, yeah.
I had to highlight them because I'd like to do it in yellow.
Oh, thank you.
Yours were in yellow, mine were in pink.
So assuming that it's the letter as amended,
It will be amended.
Grammatically correct.
Right, and not only that, Mr. Valente, since he has so much experience, on Tuesday when he comes back, there will be a draft package available for him to review. And I'm sure he will have some additional comments. I am certain of
we'd
that.
like to work it in.
Right.
Do you need more than that, or
But he was committed. He
is that
said,
enough?
if you can move this along when I get back, I'm committed to helping get it submitted, so.
I would make a motion that that
We have to-
Mrs. Hunter has our full support.
All right, I second that reluctantly.
And again, you know, no jest here. We couldn't have done this without all the help we got from the friends, so thank you.
Yeah. Is there
That gets a
anything-
here.
Valerie, Mark, Alan, is there anything you would like to add with regard to this?
Alan?
It's Alan. It's Alan Heidenheim. Valerie Heidenheim, Mark.
I
Yeah.
understand.
I don't think so. I think Robin summed it up well.
We're happy to support the grant application, and if it turns out the town can't for some reason, then we're happy to submit it and then give the money to the town.
And we have had conversations with town council about you know, who should apply for the grant, and at this point, they're leaning towards the town. But that's an easy fix. All we have to do is change the name. It's the meat of the application
That
that,
matters.
and I did reach out to Beals and Thomas because part of the application is to update, they wanted the cost estimates in an Excel spreadsheet along with tentative timelines, so they said that they would do it. But
Great. Yes. Is there anything else you would like to add?
that is it for the rail trail. It has been a busy 2 weeks, but productive. And I hope next time to report that the application was filed. And I would also like to give a shout out to Denise Garlick's office. They were so responsive to the request. You know, they had written similar letters from Medfield and Beedham, and they got right back to me, and they got drafts out for us to look at. And so they,
Yeah.
She'll be here the 28th. We can, you know, we can definitely stop by and say thank you, right?
Stop in and thank,
Following
but
that
very responsive.
With, I was going to follow that shout out to with a reminder that Denise will be here for a report to the community on December 28th.
January.
I'm sorry, January. My apologies. January
2019.
See the typos? It's endemic.
Yes. 7:15, reception, the report to the town. 7:30, questions, discussion from 8 to 8:30. So Denise will be here. I will be here. We'll be here. We look forward to seeing everyone. So thank you. Thanks, Denise. Carroll Community update.
Yes, quickie. Our next meeting is on January 31st. Hey, can you guys sign the sheet just to make sure we have your names?
Oh, right, we have
We're a little short-handed.
Everybody's accounted for.
to take in names.
That's right. Alan, make sure you put the right name down.
That's the
Thank you.
So the next meeting of the Carroll Community Center Committee is January 31st at 7:30 at the Carroll Community Center. Two things that we're working on. One is completing the spreadsheet to make sure we incorporate all of the information that we got from Don Mills and Company when we spoke. That we're hoping will be done by the 31st. Our key committee member is in Newport, working on that gas issue, and his time is a little constrained right now. The other thing is we have planned, and we're contacting other towns to initiate site visits of their facilities. And that we're hoping to get underway as early as the next week. There's a list. I don't have all the names.
You're taking names too? Are there any grants available for this?
This is,
Now that I'm, an expert on these grants.
inevitably there must be, right?
Right. Well, that's what I'm thinking. 'cause
We know there's
so
energy
many-
grants, but I
right,
don't
'cause
know.
there's so many grants available.
So, well, that'll be a question that we ask as we go through the different communities.
Right.
And then Ford and I have contacted Camille and Bob Cox and Jen Cashman, who's Dover Moms, to try to set up a time when we can come and speak with those groups as initiate our outreach to the community.
I think you'll have to also contact Janet, because I did speak to Janet about it.
Okay,
Having a coffee and
okay.
having that,
Irish coffee, right, Camille?
something like that.
Camille, I had a conversation with Janet last night and Pope as well. So they were both here at Warren, so.
So that's really going to be the focus of the group for the next several weeks. And I think then one sort of item that hopefully will come out of some of our initial discussions would be sort of creating a really more comprehensive communication strategy and making sure that we try to reach into every nook and cranny of the town of Dover and make sure people are aware what the heck is going on. That's it.
Thank you. That's a lot. I would just follow that up with, as I mentioned, Janet, Mark Maloney and Chris were here last night, were in front of Warrant last night from Rec, and Recreation, as Mr. Springett has mentioned many times in the past, has been a very big part of the conversation with Carol, in the Carol process. And again, back to our conversation regarding remote participation, one of the things that we did as a board and one of the things that the Carol process did at the very beginning was to segment the committee. And the committee has made a very concerted effort to reach out to as many constituents as possible. We thought that was a very important thing. And we do feel that the remote participation will help encourage participation within these subcommittees. So we're trying to tie all of these matters together.
That'd be nice.
That would be nice. Yeah, it's the intent. So, town administrator search. Would you like to?
I certainly would. So I did reconnect with the Collins Center
Oh, good.
after a long hiatus. They said we were in very good hands, and I said yes, but we do need to reignite the search.
Yeah, we
And
do
they agreed.
need to fire it up.
Right,
Yep.
so within the next 2 weeks, we're going to reignite the search. They suggested that maybe we just refresh ourselves, and I can send out again the most current version of the job description and profile that we had, because we really need to complete that to move the process forward. So
Yeah,
just-
we worked on the job
so-
description and the town profile.
Right, so just, he suggested we take another look at it now that we've had some time to think about it, and just see if the
Okay.
direction we were headed was still correct, or,
Okay,
and then, I'll begin to set up a series of meetings, but the critical path for that is to get that set and agreed to. And then actually his colleague, Mary Atari, she is the one that's really going to spend most of the time with us when it comes to the process, the interview process. And she'll be training the screening committee on interview techniques, what questions can be asked.
you have to remind those guys they're still on the committee, I think.
Right, no, they know that. I've been touching base with them.
Yeah.
So we will begin to dust the cobwebs off the process. With the target date being that we have somebody in here at the beginning of the fiscal year,
Right.
because they think that that's probably a really good start.
Well, the advice was wait until after Martin Luther King Day.
Right,
to-
right.
Mhm.
So,
Great. So thank you, and thank you to Felicia Hoffman and the chair of that committee and all the other members that we have selected and who have agreed to participate. We are in very good hands, and one of the other things that we mentioned last week, the week before, that Carl Valenti is just such a qualified and respected candidate and a person to have who would be a great facilitator of the process, having been through it himself. So thank you. I think we're in we're in good hands. With regards to free cash and with regards to the conversation of free cash at warrant last night, we spent about 45 minutes on free cash and reminding all the members of warrant that it is incumbent upon warrant to decide how we segment free cash and the process that we take to segment free cash. Just to remind everyone, and this process of the free cash conversation began probably at the end of town meeting 2 years ago.
Yeah. Certainly last May.
Certainly last May, and it's been an ongoing, a very lively conversation, and a conversation that we've sought the input of many people to try to get our focus, our strategy, our thinking along a set of guidelines, to adhere to a set of guidelines that are established to have a free cash position that doesn't fall below a certain amount and doesn't go above a certain amount, to address contingent liabilities on the regional level, to have a mitigation strategy for returning money back to our citizens in the form of reducing our tax rate, and to creating potentially a fund that would address preservation and specifically open space and our ongoing needs, which has continuously been the number one concern with education and open space of the town of Dover. So we will have, as Mrs. Hunter and we have discussed earlier, there will be places that we have left as placeholders on the warrant. Whether the warrant committee decides to utilize all of the placeholders, combine them, will be a matter that we will discuss with Warren, and is an ongoing conversation.
So do you think you're in a position where you could maybe draft a framework
Yes.
under which you're working? Because I think that would be helpful, maybe to even post it on the website. Just, I know free cash is a hot issue for many citizens.
A lot of people,
Right.
yeah.
And as part of that framework, I think it's important to remind citizens what free cash is.
We have a great document that will be posted. I shared it with Warrant last night. It was given to me by Jerry Lane, and it is our municipal data bank. And the Division of Local Services sent us a 28-page group of. I've seen that. That's
No, I have not.
in the past. We literally just got that yesterday, and it's the culmination of Dover's free cash position over, I believe, the past 11 or 12 years. So it shows specifically where we were, how we got here, and where we are relative to towns of our size. I think it's a great document that has a lot of data. I'd like to, as you suggested, Mrs. Hunter, that will be posted on our site, and it will fall under the discussion of the free cash and the 4 specific topics that we have had
Yeah,
an ongoing
yes,
conversation.
all part of that'd be great, all part of the framework
I
for,
would really appreciate getting
Yeah,
a copy of that.
well, presumably this is emailable.
Yeah, that just literally just came to me from Jerry Lane on Wednesday. So it was distributed to Warren last night, and we'll certainly distribute a
Okay.
copy to everybody today. And that's, any questions or anything else you'd like to?
No. Likewise, I get a copy, that'd be great. And that way you can sit in the office and go through it.
It's a lot to go through. It's an extensive document with a whole lot of information.
So at some point, I mean, my initiation into the world of free cash happened last May when we had a joint meeting that I wasn't part of. I mean, I was just there as a citizen before is that something we should do again to make sure?
Well, I think we should start, that's why I asked if there was a framework, because
Yeah.
I think it would be good to have, to offer a couple of open sessions to explain what free cash is, the framework under which Warren
Information
and the Board
sessions.
of Selectmen are working on, and just just so that, I don't know if people will attend, but at least we can begin to have the discussions and try to explain the thought process.
Yeah, no, I think
Because
it's,
it was really important to both this committee and Warren that it's a well thought out strategy.
well, yes,
And
yes.
not to just make
And
decisions.
open.
And not to make decisions that will hurt us in the future.
Right.
So to really, and that's the benefit of having a framework.
Well, you could do it, we could
It's
do one
not
of, we could do one of
subjective.
these because the warrant committee is not a televised meeting.
Correct.
Right.
Right. So we talked about the framework certainly is critical, and the framework has been being refined as we
Yes,
began this
yes.
conversation some 10 months ago. But I think it's important to reiterate that the genesis of this conversation was so that, just as Mrs. Hunter alluded to earlier, the conversation doesn't happen at quite literally the 11th hour prior to town meeting and at the 11th hour at town meeting. I think I drew the short straw both the past 2 years to make the compelling arguments whether the amount of free cash was the right amount or the free cash conversation was happening quite literally at the 11th hour when people are emotionally exhausted. So
And it is one of them, it
Is
is
a critical-
the most important issue.
Sure.
here.
So the segmenting of the free cash to articles, as we've discussed this evening, I think is very important.
Yeah,
It's something
it is.
that we
Yep.
decided would be a major point of our board's goals and objectives for this year. And I think we've accomplished everything that we set out to do. The detail, as we remind everybody, is warrant brings to us the specific amounts that we have discussed and whether these things are tied together or left to be individual items, and that is to be determined. So I also think that this segues very well into the next item for other business is specifically we should have, and I agree with you, Mr. Spring, with regards to a report prior to town meeting of the items that we will be discussing. And I think that a televised or a joint session, maybe a second joint session with warrant would be advised because there are a number of articles this year.
Potentially.
Potential.
So
articles.
coming back, I mean, there's been, like I mentioned a couple of times, there have been several efforts made, probably the most recent one by the group that Jim Rapetti put together
Right.
for how to get information out to the town. I mean, I think syndicating information about the group's work on free cash and like I said, outreach and engagement, I think it's got to be done. It's just a critical thing.
Right, and
Otherwise, it just looks like it's, a couple of small committees got together in a,
And in talking to Mr. Valente, that's why the funds that we're going to ask for appropriations for IT become so critical, because the younger generation is used to getting everything on their
Phones.
smartphones.
on their phones.
And they are used to getting information right away, and we need to figure out and have an infrastructure to supply information that way.
Yeah,
Because you do look at other towns, and that's how they're getting information to their citizens. And we recognize it's a goal, but it can't happen, in 1 month.
No, it can't happen.
It's gonna be an ongoing process, but we really need to start to cater to all the citizens. And so we have to think about, which is a challenge in other towns, although the younger residents are attached to their smartphones and iWatches, but then you have other, like I look at my father, for instance, he would never think to go onto the town's website to get information. So it's a challenge, and we need to try and figure out how other towns supply information or get information out to all of their citizens. And we've talked a lot to Mr. Valente, and he told us about some things that towns he's worked at tried and worked, and other things that failed.
Didn't work, so yeah, didn't
Right,
work.
and it also depends on the town, like certain things may work. So it is gonna be a trial and error process,
Yes.
but we really have to start to move
Yes.
in that direction and try and figure out how to get information out.
I think it's a great opportunity to remind everyone that just if you take the items in the Selectmen's update on the agenda, each of these items has been on our agenda and something that we've discussed at every meeting since we began our planning meetings in May. And we have spent hours and hours and hours trying to be as thorough and as inclusive and finding a consensus on all of these items. Not in just take, for example, rail trail and the number of moving parts in the rail trail, trying to be, we've kept an open door with all of the constituents. We've tried to be very mindful of neighbors, of butters. We've tried to really be inclusive of each party in not only the Carroll community process and the Carroll community search, but just putting together the search committee, the hours that we took deliberating and discussing the members of that committee. Same with the search committee.
Yeah, make sure we get,
Just
respect the
there
will of
is-
the voter on things like rail trail and try to do a fair amount of engaging other people, new people, young people, residents across the spectrum to represent the town on these projects.
The constituents is diversified as from the Hunt Club to the Council on Aging and neighbors and all the people who've been impacted by, again, just topics that we've discussed in Selectmen's updates. Everybody's impacted by free cash. Everybody has an opinion. So trying to find consensus and trying to be mindful of what the proper thing to do is as we approach this has been something we began. That discussion began literally the minute town meeting ended last year.
That's why I love frameworks. Because you're trying to take the emotion out of it. You're trying to have a analytical methodology.
Yep.
And make decisions that aren't emotion-based.
I know we've spoke this evening and others, and you're absolutely right, Mrs. Hunter. We've tried to have a process where a process was lacking. We've tried very diligently to create a process, to adhere to a process. So we will continue with all of the items.
Now your favorite part of the
My
meeting.
favorite part of the evening is our.
If you promise to do it fast, we'll let
Yeah,
you read it.
we'll let you go.
Let me read.
Yeah, because I don't have my glasses. I don't have my reading
Well, I
glasses.
could do it.
Goodness. All right.
All right, well, you lost out.
I
All
got
right,
it.
so we have
There's only
three
three
special
items.
items.
3 items. And one of them is retroactive. It really doesn't even count. Go ahead.
So the first one is for January 22nd at the Boston College at the Connor Center. The second one is February 21st. It is a craft beer and food
Wow.
pairing at Powasset Farm, and they're going to have another one on March 7th. All of these licenses have been approved by the police chief. And I would make a motion to accept all 3 licenses.
So
Seconded.
moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Good. That craft beer thing sounds interesting.
Yeah.
They have not,
Mr. Sullivan.
if they have not worked
Got one
with
more.
it.
One more. I apologize. One more. Approving the minutes
Right.
from December 18th.
So I'll move to accept the minutes of the Board of Selectmen's meeting of December 18th, 2018.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, and I will thank Mrs. DeScillo once again for an impeccable job. Mr. Sullivan. Thank you. Thank you for your attendance.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. I will accept a motion to adjourn at 8:46. 6?
I think it's 7:46.
It's
Seven.
7:55.
7:54.
Again.
So there'll be remedial
Okay, all
clock
right.
reading.
All right, do you guys want the official time here?
Yes,
Is it Mickey?
it is.
All right.
Lily, but she's
So
not.
moved.
7:46.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah. Aye.
Second.
Done.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
So,
Lots and lots and lots to cover.
Here you go.
7:55. Looks like 7:47 to
It's the
me.
one.
And he doesn't lie.
That were-
So